Hello, happy Martin Luther King Day, and welcome to our live session for today. And today we want to be having a powerful question and answer session, and we are going to be discussing on breaking through the Scrum market job in 2024. So I'm happy that you're joining in today. And before we get straight into our conversations for today, I want you to let me know where you're watching in from. It's going to be a very powerful session. We are going to be talking through some really powerful question and answer session. And as you join in, one of the things you definitely want to do is put your answers on the chat box as well, your questions on the chat in the chat menu, so that we can kind of take them along as we move and definitely provide you with the answers of the questions. So, without wasting much time, we are going to go right ahead and get started. I want to start today with one of the most interesting questions which anyone which is looking forward to interviewing in the job market should know. So, uh, just kind of a heads up. One of the reasons why we actually do like live videos or live sessions is more or less to give you an idea of what you need to know if you are in the job market. If for any reason you are missing out on some of these aspects, it's an indication that you need to go back and do your homework. All right. So the first questions which or the first thing which you should be able to evaluate, right? It's more like a pointing point which you can use to evaluate on or what you should know in case you are in the um, Scrum Master job is being able to evaluate the question that you're joining, if you're joining an organization and they were new to Agile and they want you to evaluate which of the approach would be the best for them to adopt. What are you going to take into consideration in order to advise what they should go with? What will you take into consideration in order to advise which of the approach they should go with? So the question is, you're joining an organization as the Scrum Master, and they are new to Scrum. How will you help them pick an approach or pick a framework which is best for them? Will you advise them to go Scrum? Will you advise them to go Kanban? Will you advise them to go Safe? And in each of these approach, what is going to be the way in which you are going to navigate them to establish that? Okay, so the first thing which we are going to kind of consider when we are picking an approach or when we are picking a way of working in any environment is their nature of work. Now, the first thing you should understand if you're in the agile space is to understand that when we talk about agile, we are talking about a way of implementing work. So it's a mindset of implementing work. So agile is not equals to scrum. Agile it's a thinking. It's just like if I say education, you cannot immediately equate it to, let's say, an elementary school, a college, or university. You need to be able to ask further question for you to understand the type of education I am talking about. So the same way, whenever you hear the word agile, it gives you an idea that we need to now narrow down to what we want to do with agile. So if you're joining an organization and for any reason they're confused on what approach to use, should we go Scrum, should we go Kanban, should we go Save, or should we go Scrum Ban? The first thing which you are going to use to determine what approach they should use is to evaluate their nature of work, right? Their nature of work. Now, tie this back to when I made the example of if I call the word education, you need to be able to establish some questions to understand the type of education I'm talking about, right? So if I just say education, you cannot put a direct point to what I mean until you can ask for that question to understand it. The same thing when we are talking about agile, you cannot really put a point to agile until you ask questions on what are the implementation processes to validate which of the framework is going to be used in implementing it. If I come to you and I say, okay, look, I need education, right? Now, you are not just going to take me and put me anywhere. You want to evaluate the state where I am. You want to evaluate what I want to achieve by the nature of education. And you want also to be able to evaluate my own understanding of what education is all about. So if I'm joining an organization and I want to be their scrum master and they don't know what approach, they don't know what approach they want to implement. They are not aware of what approach they want to implement. Now, the first thing is I need to understand their nature of work. Their nature of work means that I want to be able to look at what exactly are you delivering, who is the client, and what are the kind of relationship you have with this client, who are those engaged in the entire process. Now, what is how do we collect the requirement? In a nutshell, what I'm trying to explain here is that you need to be able to come up with more of a roadmap on what they want to do. So that's the summary of what I'm trying to look into. Now, with a roadmap, we're looking at first the organization vision, we're looking at the product vision, we are looking at the release planning, we are looking at the implementation approach. Now, when you come up with all of these different stages or different level of requirements that are needed, it's now important for you to look at the flow of the requirement. So the core center for you making a choice on the Scrum approach that will be used is based on the flow of requirement. If the flow is predictive, which means that we can plan work and kind of have more predictability within the next 3 months or within the next 2 or 3 months, within at least the next 1 month, then we can now advise them. Okay, we can use a Scrum approach. Why is the Scrum approach more important when we can predict more work at least 1 month ahead? Why? Because with Scrum, we plan with at least 2 weeks cycle, right? So if you can predict work that you will deliver within the next 2 weeks, then Scrum is not going to help you. All right. So now, what are you going to evaluate or what would you see in order to advise them to use the Kanban approach? With Kanban, we have requirement constantly changing. So requirements or requests can kind of change at any time t, and we go with the top priority. So we are not focusing on creating a goal which is going to keep us focused on in the next 2 weeks like the Scrum approach. We are more focused on what is the most important priority for business now. So if work comes in right now and is more important than what I was working on, I need to put that one on hold and pick up the work that I need to do now. So if priorities are constantly changing, there is a need for us to go Kanban. Now, SAFE, which is Scale Agile Framework, is not an entry or is not an entry implementation approach for any organization that is new to Agile. Why? Because SAFE is more of taking it to a bigger level where you have multiple teams. It's recommended to have at least 5 teams that are coming together to create alignment. So SAFE come in to help create alignment. But Save, we're still talking about Scrum teams, but now we're talking about multiple Scrum teams that are willing to create alignment because their work kind of have a lot of a point where they're cross cutting. So in that way, there's going to be a lot of dependency that need to be managed. Now, SAFe is not the only scale agile framework, but then it's the most popularly used out there. in terms of most of the big banks, in terms of most of the big people in healthcare, in terms of the government, is the most widely used out there. That's why we recommend most often Sage. But then when you go through, you can also see that we have approaches like Scrum as K. We have approaches like less, which kind of less more or less similar to Scrum, but the way of planning is a bit more uh, it's a bit more different, right? Like um, having a common backlog where everyone come in to plan before moving down to their team to do a whole lot of stuff. But then, if you're new to Agile, I advise you to stick to understanding Scrum, understanding Kanban, and then understanding Scale Agile. Now, these three will give you a very deep understanding of how the entire Agile framework works. When you move now to safe or less, and then maybe discipline agile is more or less on adaptations. All right, so see questions coming in already, and you can put in your questions. We have like 30 minutes to be able to have a very good conversation, and also to see what questions you have that we can answer. And hello to Mavis, hello to Paul, hello to Cass, and hello to Francois. And Francois have a question. How's the job market? It seems slow. What's the reason for that? Yes, definitely the Scrum market is a bit slow now. And the main reason why it's slow and why it seems slow, it's not because there are no jobs out there, there are jobs out there. What is happening is that we have a lot of people who have moved into the space of Scrum, right? So consider that uh, last year, for instance, we had about 100,000 people with Scrum certification and in the market competing for 7,000 jobs. Now, this year, we have about 1 million people in the market competing for, let's say, 10,000 jobs, right? So the proportions at which the people are getting into Scrum versus the proportion at which the jobs are growing, there's a big discrepancy. So it's going to take you an average. Normally, it would normally take you a shorter cycle to find a job, right? In Scrum, maybe 2 years back or 3 years back, because many people were not in the space. So the cycle time it's smaller. But then now with so many people in the state, there's still jobs. But then it takes you a bit longer time. It doesn't mean that you cannot have a job. So, but then one of the things which is also kind of peculiar about the job market, which you should understand, is that many people who are flying into the space of Scrum have not yet also taken the time to master the details and the basics. So you will see a position up for about 5 months, and that position is renewed again. Why? Because they have been interviewing and they're not finding the right candidate. And that is why you need to do everything possible to ensure that whenever you have an interview, you are putting in the best shot. You need to put in the best to learn. You need to practice until you become that person that immediately the interview they want to say, you know what, this is the person we will be looking for. But if you have more of shallow knowledge, you realize that even if you have like the best resume so far in the world, whenever they come across you and grant you an interview question, they will see a very big gap between the person they are talking to and the person on the resume. So yes, there is actually a very big gap in the market. The market seems slow, but it's the people having jobs like every day. Trust me, in our community, you have people having jobs like almost every week. You just need to put in the time, put in the effort, put in what it takes for you to be able to get a job. All right. So, our next question, which we are going to talk about today, it's a very popular question. It's popular, but on the same note, I think it's one of the questions many people are confused about or always confused about. It's about tell me your role as a Scrum Master, your role or the role of a Scrum Master. Now, most often when people hear this question, tell me your role as a Scrum Master, what they tend to do is that they tend to start describing Scrum events. Like, oh, as a Scrum Master, what they do is facilitate events, and then they switch to start explaining what the daily stand up is, what the um, uh, planning is, and what all the different events are. All right. Now, this is one of the questions that evaluate your know-how on Scrum. Why? Now, your role as a Scrum Master, in most of the cases, many people have learned it. When you learn it from a theoretical perspective, you would think your role of a Scrum Master is purely to facilitate events and remove impediments. But the role of a Scrum Master is it's bigger than that. Now, facilitating events and removing impediment are activities or that you do in order to execute your role as a Scrum Master. Your main role as a Scrum Master is to facilitate the delivery of business value or the delivery of business value incrementally to the customer. Now, I want to repeat this again. My role as a Scrum Master is to facilitate the delivery of business value incrementally using an incremental approach to satisfy the business need of the customer. This is the reason Scrum it's a customer centric and it focuses on what? Iterative development. Customer centric focus on iterative development, and the goal is to be able to satisfy the customer at the end. So, as a Scrum Master, your role is to be able to facilitate the delivery of business value to the customer using an incremental approach. In order for you to deliver this role, you leverage Scrum events that help you to be able to plan work within shorter cycle. And these events include the sprint planning, the daily stand up, the backlog refinement, the sprint review, and the sprint retrospective. And all of these events have a unique role they play in helping you accomplish your role as a Scrum Master. In sprint planning, it's an opportunity for you to be able to pull and focus on the work or on the increment that you'll be building for the next 2 weeks. With a daily stand up, it's a checkpoint where you come every day to evaluate and understand where each and every one in the team is and see if there are any challenges that you need to resolve. Now, with the backlog refinement, it should happen in the middle of the spring in preparation for the next spring so that if there are any surprises, you can handle them well ahead of time. The spring review gives you the opportunity to collaborate with the stakeholders and then present the increment that you've been building during the spring to the stakeholder in order to have their feedback. And then the spring retrospective gives you the opportunity to be able to measure and grow, to learn from what you have been building and see if there are possible means that will help you become much better. Now, if you look at the way I explain this, you realize that what it gives the person who is interviewing you a more deeper insight that, oh, you understand exactly what you're doing. So this is one of the improvements that you can implement in your next interview in order to close the gap. Now, the third thing I want to talk about today, I want to talk about taking interviews. Taking interviews. Most of the cases, a lot of people or a lot of aspiring Scrum master what they need to do. But the act of taking interview is bigger than you sitting behind the camera and then answering questions. This is where many people actually fail. When we talk about interviewing, one of the things which you want to pay very close attention, interviewing it's more of a mindset game. It's a mindset game because people are the one interviewing you. So you must be able to kind of read the environment and understand the kind of people who are interviewing you, and also mastering what exactly they are looking for. This is where your emotional intelligence comes in. Now, if I start talking to somebody and I realize, oh, this person is someone who is kind of persuasive and want to really hold strong to their point, I need to understand how to pull the conversation. If I start talking to somebody and I understand this person is someone who need a straight answer and no deeper stuff, I need to understand how to pull the conversation. If I'm talking to somebody and I realize this person is the kind of person who like practical examples, I need to be able to leverage that strength. But if my goal to go to any interview is to go to sit behind my screen and answer questions and go back without actually trying to create an environment where I can master or I can match the energy of the place, then I'm doing myself a disfavor. Now, the second thing about interviewing, which a lot of people do not really pay so much attention, is also the environment. Now, the environment is very powerful. If you look at the way my video is structured, think about you being in an interview and having this setting. Right now, the professional setting of your environment is a whole lot. And a lot of people go to an interview, their background blur, they're using virtual background. And probably when you move your head, we cannot see one part of your ear. And maybe we are only seeing like your head and all of that. This is very, very not a good approach. Now, when we are evaluating you, remember they want to be able to bring you to their environment. The reason they are bringing you to their environment is not just about Scrum. They want to look at and evaluate how you are going to collaborate and how you are going to integrate with other people in the environment. So apart from you knowing Scrum, they want to see that other human part of you, the way you communicate, the way you are able to relate to them, the way you are able to respond to questions that you are not aware of. It's very important. It's very important. So we need to be able to master all of these as strategies. And most of this stuff don't come, you don't learn them when you sit behind the computer. No. You need to be able to learn them before you ever had the opportunity to interview. All right. So let me see if you have further questions, and I'm going to take them up. I have about 7 more minutes to leave, and if there are any questions, you can drop them up. So one of the things I'm also going to do is I'm going to drop the link for my ebook, which I'm giving for free. You can be able to download it for free, and the ebook is going to give you my 3 steps on how to learn an interview. Uh, it focuses mainly on first you setting the stage, which is what many people don't do. What do I mean by you setting the stage? Setting the stage simply means that you need to be able to see the value and the importance of what you want to get. Now, this is very, very, very important. You need to be able to see the value of what you want to get and put a very big price on it. Many people have not valued the process of them engaging in Scrum as much as possible. And that's the reason why it's been very difficult for them to go through, because the value they put there is very low. Now you need to be able to treat it as a career. I always say, think about Scrum like when you went to college, when you went after your degree, right? Your goal was not just to get it today, which is what many of us want. We want a job tomorrow, and if we don't want it tomorrow, we'll back out. Now, if you really, really want to build a career, and you, what do? You enroll in a university. When you fail a course, what happens? You take the patient and you receipt on that course. So you prepare yourself that you're going to do everything it takes. right? After investing thousands of dollars, you still put in the work. But then the mistakes we're having now is that many people want to come into the space and maybe they're feeling like, oh, attending a class is going to give me a job, or being part of a coaching community, it's very important, it's going to give me a job. Now, it's not coaching communities that gives you the job. First, it's the mindset behind what you have, and then finding a good community. These are two combinations that gives you the job, right? So, very important. I'm going to share that book, and I also share like what you should be looking for in the space in order to actually land a job, or what you should be doing. This is very, very important. So I'll share that on the comment section. If not now, we're immediately I'm done with the call. I see um Sherry say, where can I gain volunteers such internship experience? All right, Sherry, do I will I say the way to go around this is to join a community that is actually practicing Scrum. Not like pure internship as you are on in a company, but you want to be able to join. For instance, I'll give you an example of what happened within my community. Now we simulate situations that are similar to work environment, and then we'll let you practice on how to role play those roles on real project. You run all the events, you facilitate as a scrum master, you work with a team. So by doing that, you are able to do what? You're able to visualize what a project is, how we collect requirements. Like we start from a project from scratch to end, project from a client. You sit down with your team, you break down the project into futures, you break the futures into story, you load the stories on your Jira board, and then you start partitioning it into different sprint based on the capacity of your team. And then you now start running in spring after spring. You do your spring reviews, you do your spring demo reviews, you do your retrospective. Now that gives you a feel on how to match what you're learning into what you know. So that's how you're able to close the gap. Okay, perfect. So I'll take one last question before I leave in the next 2 minutes. So if you have any question, drop it and I'll spend the last minute answering that question. If not, tomorrow we are going to be back again the same time for 30 minutes. I'm going to pick three top questions which I'm going to be discussing tomorrow, but I'll also give room for you to ask your own question. I'll also provide enough space for you to ask your own question. But I'll pick three top questions which I want us to discuss tomorrow. And the whole of this week from Monday to Friday, I'm going to be having a session at midday, that's Central Time, 12:30 Central Time. So if you're available at that time, you can always join in and then we can have a conversation. All right. So, and thank you very much for joining. I'll definitely share the link for the ebook for those who want to get that for free. You can download a copy. When you download a copy, I think we'll send you an email, and from your email, you should be able to get the free full copy. And I would say, don't just get this copy, take your time and go through it. It's very powerful. If you can master and follow strictly what I recommend on that ebook, trust me, getting a job will not be something very difficult for you. Thank you very much for joining today, and I will see you tomorrow on our series Breaking Through the Scrum Master Job in 2024. And then, if you want like more in-depth teachings on some of the concept, make sure that you subscribe to my YouTube page. Weekly, we are going to be uploading a lot of content that we have in order to close the gap. Thank you very much, and have a great day.